Hey friends, it's Ian Khan at Consensus 2025. I've got with me Chris from Yellow Card. Let's see what they've been innovating, what have they been up to, and what's happening in the future. Chris, thanks for jumping on board the Futurist ship right here at Consensus. What is cooking?
Well, first off, it's great to be here with you, brother. Let me tell you, Consensus, I can tell you what's cooking. I had Chipotle yesterday, and look, I'm a regular Chipotle eater in the US. It was $9 cheaper in Canada.
Wow!
So nobody ever told me Canada was cool. This is big news.
Well, we treat people nicely here, so there you go. Oh man, but here we are. Consensus is happening in Toronto for the first time, I think. But what are you feeling? What are you guys working on? Why are you here?
Yeah, it's great. You know, look, I think when you look out over the past 6 months or so, the industry has changed a lot, right? And I will say there is an irony to, the US finally adopting this technology and Consensus going to Canada for the first time, 6 months later. But, the change has been just stark. And I think, for us and with a lot of the work that we do, right, and you and I have talked, right, but, we're the largest licensed stablecoin payments infrastructure provider for Africa and the broader emerging world. So we work with banks, businesses like, SpaceX and a number of other, companies like that, helping them move money and make international payments, manage their treasury, access dollars, things like that. And, look, I think over the last 6 months or so, it's just been a stark change in the way that people perceive this industry and the way that people are talking about this industry. And, we have companies and banks and financial institutions that have signed up to work with us in the last, 3 to 6 months that I remember, 2-3 years ago telling me that this is stupid and that, that stablecoins are dumb and, all of this, right? And now they've come around. So it's for me, a lot of this is like a full circle moment where all the people that doubted this industry are now starting to realize that, stablecoins especially are the future, and you either have to get on board or you're going to miss the boat.
Yeah, and it's just, I think the last couple of years that things have changed. I mean, it was either the last 10 or the last 2, but I think things are moving in a different direction. What do you see happening over the next, 2 to 5 years, assuming things remain the same? What do you think is the adoption of different industries towards stablecoins, or what do you want? What's your ideal outcome for the next 5 years?
I think the next 2 years are going to be pretty unbelievable, and then look, at a certain point you start to grow slower, right? Just like the U.S. economy or the Chinese economy, or you get too big and you start to grow slower. But I think the next 2 years are going to be pretty unbelievable. I think the big thing that I always point to is, right now you have $240 billion market cap for US dollar stablecoins. And let's be honest, right? 200 billion of that was driven largely by retail, right? Using USDT, USDC as an intermediary between dog and cat coin on, Binance or any of these other major exchanges. And I think that with corporates now entering the mix, and with these large banks, large financial institutions, you've seen it from JP Morgan, from Wells Fargo, you've seen major companies in payments and remittance talk about it at earnings, etc. With these guys now entering the space, you're going to see within the next 2 to 5 years well over $1 trillion of market cap on USD stablecoins. Because the thing is retail can only get you so far, right? Like some guy trading fart coin in his basement and needing USDT, as the in-between leg. That only gets you so far. Corporates and corporate treasury movements, that is, trillions of dollars a year all over the world that will be running on these rails.
Very cool. What's your take on different regions? Who's adopting more? Who's doing more work? Who's actually doing something good?
Yeah, look, I think by every available metric, the African continent is really where this technology has taken off, right? You have, the most adoption, right? Look, none of these are, Chris stats, right? These are stats from Visa, and stats from other, very reliable sources. Nigeria is number 1 for this technology for stablecoins. It's number 2 for crypto overall. And And I think that what you've started to see now, especially in the last 6 months or so, is as the U.S. moves to regulate this space, you're seeing more and more countries across the continent saying, well, hold on, this space has been going on here for a long time. There's a number of companies that have grown up here, that are investing here, that are hiring here, that are building jobs, growing the economy. We want this stuff to happen here. And so you've started to see a lot more legislation move and come through in the last couple of months. And look, I've told people over the last 2.5 years, there's been no better place to run a company in stablecoins than the African continent. You have more licensing regimes, more access to regulators, more engagement with regulators than in any other single part of the world in a friendly way.
Yeah.
And so, now with the movements over the last 6 months and what the U.S. economy and the U.S. government is doing, I think it's only going to accelerate that. And you're going to have, look, this technology is meant for the emerging market. Yeah. It's meant for the emerging world. It's not built for, I piss some people off at this conference when I say stuff like this, but I've sent money from the U.S. to Europe. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
It works kind of fine.
Yeah.
Right? You throw in emerging markets, it's very difficult.
Let's talk about the U.S., right? What has the U.S. done in the last few years, which is great, and what do you want them to do?
I think what the U.S. has done recently that has been great is just the shift in narrative. What they need to do is pass actual legislation. Mm-hmm. Trump and others in the White House and the executive branch and Congress. You have Haggerty, you have also Brooks, you have all these people on both sides that are going out and talking about this technology. That's great, because that helps, right? And when big companies hear the president or the commerce secretary or senators and congresswomen and such talking about this, it helps, right? And it moves them forward in their understanding and their willingness to adopt the technology. That being said, we both know how American politics work. Right,
Yeah.
You go back 6 months, it was a very different tone coming from the executive branch on this industry. And in 4 years, you could again have a very different tone coming from any branch on this industry, which is why actual legislation is important. And I think obviously it's a shame that the Genius Act last week became so politicized, and hopefully that will hopefully they will find a way to get that through. Hopefully they'll find a way to get that through ASAP, especially with Trump's tax bill and other stuff coming up that's going to take focus away.
Yeah.
But you have to pass actual legislation.
Yeah, I'm hearing a lot that a lot of big companies, the Franklin Templetons and the BlackRocks of the world are now getting into tokenization, and just because they're so big, things will start moving in a different direction. And the fact that okay, the traditional banking system is great, but now there's big players who are moving things in the digital space.
Yep.
What's your outlook on that?
That's 100% the case, right? And again, going back to my point, this market has been largely driven by retail. When you look at the U.S. and when you look at stablecoins broadly, it's been driven largely by retail to date. Moving forward, as you start to get these large corporates, these large money managers, the BlackRocks, all of that. BlackRock basically controls the world, right?
Yeah.
So you start to get these guys involved, and all of a sudden, it is, the sky's the limit in terms of, how much money can flow into this industry, how much money can flow on these rails. And again, that's the big thing that I think people miss is, corporates have so much more money than you and I, right?
Yeah.
These guys can move billions of dollars through this technology every day, right? You and I might need the technology as individuals once in a while, right? Or we might be speculating. Corporates need this stuff every day for payments. And so I think, as these big companies get involved, again, you're going to see the market cap go, for, especially for stablecoins, go from, a couple $100 billion to a couple trillion, right? Because that's the type of money and access that these guys have. And, the other thing I would point out, when you look at, BlackRock and tokenization of assets and things like that in this space, who does more volume on stocks? Robinhood or, BlackRock and Fidelity?
Yeah.
Right? And it's just because these guys are managing so much money, right? These are large institutional players. It's not retail players trading things back and forth.
Correct. I love it. I think there's lots coming our way. I don't know what the new things will be at next year's consensus, but crypto conversations are up. Everybody's excited about Bitcoin. Whatever is happening. So I think it's an exciting time, and I feel it's going in the right direction. Let's see what
100%.
happens, right? Hopefully things remain stable.